Hey folks, it's me, John Jack, here with a weekly indie show to go with our regular show. We didn't have quite enough time to tackle indies and big two books on the regular show, and so I decided to have an independent show about independent books. Go figure. This week, I'm going to be talking House Amok from IDW, Lone Ranger from Dynamite, Dead Rabbit from Image, and Konungar War of Crowns, which is a trade paperback from Titan Comics, as well as Deep Roots number 4 from Vault Comics. And at the end of the show, I'm going to have a Kickstarter spotlight, which will be revealed then. So stay tuned for that. And don't forget to subscribe to the Comic Watch YouTube channel if you like what you see or you like our other videos. And if you feel so inclined as to donate, we do have a Patreon account. Our editor-in-chief, Tyler, puts a lot of time and money into the site that, it'd be good to get some return. Obviously, no pressure. I spend all my money on comics. I'm sure you do too. So we're going to start off with Lone Ranger number 1 from Dynamite Comics, which follows a border dispute brought on by governors using a new tool, well, new to the 1860s, which is barbed wire to keep people out of land that isn't necessarily theirs, but isn't necessarily the governor's either. Also, they have enabled their henchmen to kill anyone who is caught in the barbed wire and therefore trespassing. So the Lone Ranger gets involved when he's investigating one such murder, when he finds a couple settlers caught up in some barbed wire and shot up. And he ends up tracking the henchmen to a farmhouse, and there's a pretty spectacular shootout there. I was pretty overjoyed to see Silver kicking butt in there. Silver being his horse, of course. Ugh, terrible joke. But Silver, was pretty awesome and pretty deciding factor. And at the end of the fight, the Lone Ranger shoots a barrel. And like any good video game, the barrel explodes, blowing up the entire farmhouse and, any evidence. Way to go. So he decides that he can't accomplish this without help. So he goes to a nearby Indian camp and looks up an old friend who we, of course, know, which would be, obviously, Tonto. Lone Ranger is a really cool older property. My oldest comic actually happens to be Lone Ranger related. I have a 1952 issue of Tonto, which is a Dell 4 color. Pretty cool. All in all, I found the issue to be pretty enjoyable. I don't think there's nearly enough westerns out there these days, and so it's nice to see a new genre, or not a new genre, but an underused genre. I feel like we need more westerns and more sword and sorcery series these days. Last notable western I can think of is probably Go West from Alterna Comics. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired, just got off work. And that was a cool revenge story. This is more of a, not quite a mystery, because obviously we know who the bad guy is, but, just a general hero story, which, again, we don't get enough non-powered, gritty vigilantes. Yeah, that's a lie. But definitely worth the read, definitely worth your time. I found the art from Bob Q to be really good, and that is written by Mark Russell. I'll definitely be following the series as it goes on. This series and the next one I'm going to talk about are both first issues, so it's a good jumping on point if you're going to be following along with me. Next on my list is going to be Dead Rabbit number 1, which is from Image Comics, written by Jerry Dugan with art by John McCrea and Mike Spicer. And so Dead Rabbit opens with a news report of the tale of the Dead Rabbit, which was kind of a vigilante, kind of robbing from the rich and giving to himself 20 years ago, back in the 90s, who is rumored to have taken one last big score of $10 million, and then run off on his own. And they end it with a "Where are they now?" And the "Where are they now" is a truly hysterical splash page that you should discover for yourself. And I won't spoil it right now because, my goodness, it is very, very funny. So we cut to the dead rabbit now, which is current time. He was last seen in 1998, 20 years ago. And he's working as a greeter at a Walmart. When he's working his usual shift at the Walmart, when he sees someone buying accoutrements of murder, you could say, which would be, a shovel, a rope, some lime, fertilizer, whatever you might use to dispose of a body, I suppose. Perhaps your methods are different than mine. It's October. Murder jokes are cool now. And so he stops. He stops the murderer at the cash register and asks him for ID for his credit card. And when he does so, he gets his address. Later that night, he switches over into his dead rabbit persona, which is a pair of knuckle dusters and an all black suit and a really cool black mask with red X's over the eyes. You can see it on the cover. I think it's actually a really cool character design. And he goes into the house and immediately subdues the man he saw earlier and his partner that he discovers after the fact. And then he discovers that the duo have a room full of captive women who are, apparently being either, trafficked or whatever the hell they do to captive women. I don't even want to think about it. It's horrible. But he frees the women and takes whatever money he can find and goes back home to his wife. The women go to the news, and when shown a lineup of masks, they pick the dead rabbit mask out of the lineup. And the news reports that the dead rabbit has returned. On the TV, the drug lord, which was his last big score, sees him and says it's time to get his money back, which was $12 million. So, he's been outed as not being dead. So, interesting twist for next issue. I'm definitely going to be following this series as it progresses. I thought it was really fun. Jerry Dugan is is best known for a pretty lengthy Deadpool run. I personally have never read a Deadpool comic in my life and probably never will, but nothing against it really. But I thought this was less goofy than I would have expected, and I checked it out in the I get advanced review copies of comics, and I liked it enough that I turned around and bought it that week. So it is definitely a purchasable comic, whatever you want to call it. It's worth your money, is what I'm trying to say. But I don't really I'm not going to tell you about books that I think are bad. So it's up to you to make your own decisions, of course. I ended up getting 5 indie books this week. So that's a pretty good week for indie books. I average about as many indie books as I do DC and Marvel books, probably depending on who's putting books out that week. Last week I had a Scout book. This week I had an Image book, an IDW book. Just obviously it all caters to your fancy and what kind of books you like. I feel like there's something out there for anyone. And I currently buy books from about 10 different publishers. And so next book I'm going to talk about is House Amok, which is from IDW Black Crown, which is an imprint of IDW, more of an adult imprint, and is written by Christopher Sebela, who is probably one of my favorite indie authors right now, with art by Sean McManus. Christopher Sebela is also currently writing Shanghai Red for Image Comics, and Crowded for, I forget who Crowded through. Also probably, I think it's probably also Image. And he recently wrote Cold War, which I loved. I loved Cold War, which was a tale of cryogenically frozen people being brought back to life and drafted into a war against robots 700 years in the future. Delightful series. It's out in trade paperback now. It has art by Hayden Sherman of Wasted Space fame. So, you know, two rising stars in the comic industry on one book that is just amazingly fun. And both of them are gaining a huge amount of popularity right now, so definitely Cold War is worth your time. Back to the matter at hand. House of Muck is a tale of a family traveling around in a school bus, fighting what they consider to be like evil or demonic or something people that are in control of corporations or some kind of controlling force that is controlling everything, and they think people have been microchipped and are killing them to find the microchips, and looking for hotspots that they can use to do away with these evil people. The trouble is, one of the daughters has come to the realization that this is all a story that she wrote that is somehow coming true. So she can't figure out if it's a shared psychosis among her family or if the trouble is genuine. So really, really interesting story, and I'm not 100% sure exactly what's going on, which is a fantastic thing when I have, or sometimes. It's hard to say, if it's, I wouldn't say it's confusing, like narratively, it's pretty easy to follow. It's just, it's almost a mystery, like an genuinely interesting mystery. So I highly recommend House of Muck from IDW and Black Crown. And really, I'm reading, I think, every book Sabella's putting out right now, and they're all great. You're going to be hearing about all of them on this video series as they come out. I think next week's an issue of Crowded, and then I just got an issue of Shanghai Red, I want to say a week or two ago, so it might be a couple weeks before we see Shanghai Red. And again, both of those are just phenomenal books. I'm absolutely loving Christopher Sabella right now. The artist, Sean McManus, I haven't seen him many things, but it's kind of interesting because it's not quite cartoony. I wouldn't call it cartoony because that's kind of a negative connotation, but it's kind of stylized, but it works really well since the book is told from the point of view of a little girl. And at the same time, there's these like random pages that'll be like straight up demonic, and he rolls with that perfectly too. So that's a talented artist. And again, definitely I would consider the book, worth your money and time. And that's only the second issue. That's House of Muck number 2. So I'm sure you can still find number 1. It only came out a couple weeks ago. Both issues so far have been really good. Sorry about messy cuts. I'm trying to do issues as separate videos. It's just easier that way sometimes. That way I don't have to scrap a whole show if I mess up. Next I'm going to talk about Deep Roots number 4, which is from Vault Comics, and all of these books came out on October 3rd. Deep Roots is a series about plants nature in general, but I think it's mostly plants overtaking humanity, to take back, what fans of Swamp Thing would refer to as the green. It's the living, ecosphere below, just the background, trees, plants, grass, spores in the air. And it's just, so they're overthrowing humanity by doing things like, in the first issue, there was that the zombie fungus, that takes over ants, but it had supercharged termites to the point where they could eat through concrete, and then it was taking down skyscrapers. And likewise, it's taking down soldiers and people, and some people it seems to turn into monsters, but the monsters are almost happy about being possessed by this entity and being connected to this larger web of life. And at the same time, there's an ancient-looking soldier roaming around. And as of 4 issues in, I can't figure out whose side he's on. If he's on the side of the nature, he fought a giant pollution monster, and I want to say issue 2. It was a really cool fight actually. But I can't figure out who exactly it, or what exactly he is doing. A lot of this series is kind of vague and vaguely confusing, but not necessarily in a bad way. It's more just like we don't know exactly what's going on yet. We've had multiple bad entities kind of been pointed at as potential sources of the issue, ranging from Satan to corporations. And so far, the only thing that has been able to combat them have been these high-tech whisper suits that, it's like a spacesuit almost, but a combat-ready spacesuit, and as such can keep out spores and stuff, because people get infected by spores and turn into monsters sometimes. And the story's by Dan Waters, by the way. And probably the biggest selling point to me of this series is the art by Val Rodriguez, which is, it's fairly standard in areas when they're out in the real world, but then occasionally they step back into, again, what you would consider the green or something. It's like a living biosphere that exists in almost a separate dimension, but a more magical dimension, which it's really interesting. But part of the appeal of it, when you see stuff in there, it's painted probably, I think it's paint, in an almost Van Gogh kind of tone. I'll show you some panels right now. Yeah, and you can see that they're painted, and the skies are they're just multicolored and kind of like a Monet or like a Van Gogh. Just a beautiful book. Beautiful, beautiful book. And I've bought every issue of this series so far, and I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on these creators because I like the way they work. And that is from Vault Comics once again. Alright, lastly I'm going to talk Konungar War of Crowns, which is a Static Press book, which is an imprint of Titan Comics. And that is written by, and I'm going to throw it out there right now, I'm going to butcher these names. This is a book that's translated from German, I believe. So Sylvain Runeberg is writer. Artist is Juzhen, Juzhen, Juzhen. And is translated by Ivanka Honenberger. Okay, that wasn't as bad as it could have been. Remember earlier when I was talking Lone Ranger and I said there aren't nearly enough sword and sorcery books these days. This is easily the best new sword and sorcery book I've read in the last year, and I am a sword and sorcery fan. Probably some of the best interior art I have seen, ever, for the genre. I would love to see this artist, Juzhen, working on a Conan the Barbarian or something like that. With the new Conan series coming in January, maybe it's a possibility. I'll start writing Jason Aaron now. I'm joking. So it follows as War of Crowns would implicate. It follows a royal family, and there is a power struggle between a king and his brother, who the brother thinks he should be the rightful heir to the throne. And on top of all that, there's centaurs. Why are there centaurs? I'm not really sure, because they're basically just there. They never really do anything besides talk. So the centaurs are pretty secondary to the story, which otherwise is just amazing. There's a lot of fun, a lot of intrigue. A wizard ends up creating berserkers out of the king's soldiers, which berserkers are reanimated dead soldiers, which are unkillable by anything but the blood of their creator. If you aren't hip to the lingo. I'm losing it. But the book is just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I can't recommend it enough. I believe the trade paperback is $20, which is actually a pretty great deal, because the issues are $6 each. So, you get a collected edition for only $2 more than you would have gotten all three of the singles for. Or otherwise you could get the singles, which are big, high quality issues, like fat issues. If it was a Marvel book, it'd be $12. They don't mess around with quality at Titan, I guess. Just great book. I like it so much that I've sent out some copies of #1 to some friends of mine, just to get them into it. I can't sing its praises enough. The visuals are just stunning, and just the story's cool and flows really well, and just, I know I'm just babbling incoherently here. It's a great book. Couldn't recommend it more. If your shop doesn't carry Titan, I'm certain you can order it. It's stocked through Diamond. All of these books that I've mentioned today are stocked through Diamond. So if you go to a local comic shop, you can find them, or if you do online, Midtown Comics or whatever, they'll have them. And I haven't talked about anything tonight that I didn't buy. So, definitely, all these books come with my recommendation. I'm not going to tell you about any books that I don't like. This trade paperback is just gonna be the death of me. It's just so good. I really hope they make a follow-up to it, or a sequel of some kind, because as I said, I felt the centaurs were pretty underused, which is literally my only complaint about the entire series, and it's a pretty minor complaint, because the story wasn't about the centaurs. It's the War of Crowns. That's all I got to say about that one. Now it's time for the Kickstarter Spotlight, which I promised at the beginning of the episode. And, so each week I'm going to talk about a book that is just, tiny budget. So there's a burgeoning industry of creator-owned books going out through Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe, what have you. And people send me Kickstarter books from time to time, and I try to back one a month. If I go any more than that, I end up spending way too much on comics. But I figure I can kick those guys some love this way. And so my book this week is going to be Punk Taco, which is written by Adam Walenta, with art by Adam Walenta. And And this is actually a book that it was pitched to him by his son, Wolenta. I don't recall how old his son is. Young, I believe. And it's about a anthropomorphic taco who is a punk rocker who travels the universe spreading love. It's a sweet story, really fun. The quest for more nachos, and they fight an anthropomorphized hamburger. So it's a really fun book. It is a little steep, but the reason it is steep is because it's a hardcover. It's not a single issue, which I don't know that it was said anywhere on the Kickstarter that it wasn't, but I think the first goal where you get a book is $25, which is how much the book costs. So it seems like a lot, but it's not at all bad for what you get. It's a fun book. It's got some extras in the back. The art's really good, and it's drawn by the creator, or co-creator, I guess, Adam Wolenta. And it's really fun, just cosmic. You can't see that. Like cosmic battles, and let's see. Yeah, just cool art. And there's a lot about nachos, which they say are the greatest food in the universe. And I might have to agree. Now I want nachos. I hope you're happy, Adam Wolenta. And that Kickstarter is live now. You can look up Adam Wolenta on Twitter or Punk Taco on Facebook. And, deserves your time. Deserves your support, I should say. If you have an indie book or a Kickstarter book that you want me to promote, please do message me at John Jack or John Batusi Jack on Twitter or on my Facebook page, Indie Comic Books, or you can look me up in my Facebook group, For the Love of Comic Books. I'm always happy to promote a Kickstarter book, and if I like the book and if I back the book, I will feature it on the show. Alright, well, I figure that's enough talking about comics for the week. About indie comics for the week. I will see you guys. Oh, sorry. Throat's very dry. I'll see you guys on Wednesday for the main show. And thanks for watching. I am John Jack. And let's sign off. Keep watching the skies.